You're in a position where you have to explain yourself, explain why you did something, explain why your work is better, explain why your idea is better. You're already in a weak position. If you let people continually kind of pin you down, this is who you are, this is your type, it kind of limits your freedom because their opinion of you will actually constrain what you can do. Basically, we tend to talk too much. We're very verbal, chatty creatures, particularly in the world today. And it's not a very powerful way to be. If you're in a position where you have to explain yourself, explain why you did something, explain why your work is better, explain why your idea is better, you're already in a weak position, right? Because people don't really trust words anymore, right? Because everybody talks. We're inundated with advertisements, with people who can bullshit us with all kinds of words about how great they are. You know, it's the era of con men and con women. And so the fact that you can actually demonstrate your idea through an action by making people feel that your idea is superior, by making them feel that you're actually a person of power, that you can make them feel that what you did was the right thing to do and was justified, is much more powerful and effective than blabbing a lot of words, right? And, you know, I give in the 48 Laws of Power in that chapter, I give you dozens of strategies for how you can make that, put that to life. But that's the general gist of it. A lot of people get caught up in sort of immediate emotional things like, am I getting enough attention on Instagram? How many followers do I have? Am I making as much money as other people? And if you get caught up in your 20s like that, you're going to end up in a kind of a dead end in life. Because really what brings success, ultimate success in life, is kind of realizing something from deep within. You have a purpose. You understand that there's something that you were born to do, something that connects you to your childhood, to your deepest inclinations, right? And so in your 20s, you're not in a hurry to make money or increase your Instagram followers to a certain number. You're in a position where you're going to learn as many skills as possible. You're going to follow that purpose, which for me was learning how to write and trying journalism and trying Hollywood, etc. And you're going to take your time and you're going to be calm but intense about that. And then eventually success will come. And when it comes, it's like you're able to then go to the next step because, you know, it's the purpose that guides you, not the money and not the fame. So like after I finished the 48 Laws of Power, you know, I could have gotten all drunk with the success and I could have like just kind of created the 48 Laws of Power part 2, etc. But instead I realized, no, my purpose is to continually branch off into other directions, to try new things. It's not the money that interests me. I don't mind the money. Don't get me wrong. I love the fact that I'm able to make a good living. But what really drives me is actually fulfilling this deep need within me to express what I believe is what I call my life's task. We all have that feeling like you're trying so hard to get something and the effort is actually kind of messing you up, right? It's kind of getting in your way. Like in a seduction setting, if you're so nervous and you just really, really want to please that woman that you want to seduce, and that's all your energy is going into, you're going to give off vibrations that are going to be kind of off-putting. You're trying too hard. Your intention is too obvious. But if you kind of let go, it's more a process of letting go inside of yourself and not in realizing that by letting go, oftentimes when I'm blocked in my writing, I'm trying too hard. If I take a step back and I relax and I listen to some great music or watch some football and television, suddenly the idea comes to me because I let go of that inner tenseness that kind of envelops you. We're creatures, we're animals that judge people by appearances. And we don't like to admit that, but we pick up vibes from people's appearance, their face, their body language, their presence, and we kind of judge them based on that. And once we've judged people, that's kind of who they are in our mind. And if you let people continually kind of pin you down, this is who you are, Chris, this is your type, etc., it kind of limits your freedom because their opinion of you will actually constrain what you can do, right? Your reputation kind of precedes you. And so you want to turn this around and think of your image as something that you get to play with. as something that you get to create. It's like your greatest work of art. You want to take control of the process of how people can judge you, right? Which is, you think is a little bit different. Well, I should just be who I am. But you're never exactly being who you are. You're always in some ways crafting your words and your persona and how you present yourself depending on the people you're dealing with. And I'm simply telling you here to take greater control over that, to make it more conscious, to think of yourself as a kind of actor in this world, right? And your acting is, you're not just doing anything, you're not just being yourself, but you're learning to play a role, and you're learning to sometimes change your image, right? And some of the most powerful people in this world, like a David Bowie, for instance, or a Pablo Picasso, they were constantly changing their image every 5 or 6 years. It didn't make them seem crazy. It made them seem incredibly powerful. We wanted to see, what is the next incarnation of David Bowie? Who's he going to be now in the 80s, etc.? It's very powerful, right? And in the case of Georges Sand, she was a woman at a time where women novelists were not very successful. And she decided that she was going to create this image of a woman who dressed like a man, who almost had the appearance and spirit of a man, and she took a man's name, George, and that became her image, and it was incredibly successful, incredibly powerful. It added to her aura as a successful novelist. So that's sort of the essence. Well, I do a lot of consulting work with people in various lines of work, in sports, in politics, in entertainment, etc. And the number one problem that people have is they've hired someone, a business partner, a manager, an employee to help them, and it ends up they're a disaster. They're like trying to get the company away from them. They're just so incompetent. I had no idea. Tell me, Robert, how can I get out of this? Well, I'm going to tell you how to get out of it. But first, I'm going to teach you the number one thing is never hire these fuck-ups in the first place. And the reason you're hiring them is because you're judging them on their appearance, on their dazzling resume, on their charming smile, on the cool clothes that they're wearing, right? And they kind of charm you and they kind of con you with their appearance. And that's sort of the animal part of our nature, where we're kind of dazzled by how things look. You need to look below the surface. Character is something that's etched so deeply in people, they almost cannot control it. It's what creates patterns of behavior in their life. That is who they are. Some people have a good character, and some people have a very bad character. And instead of good or bad, I like to say strong or weak. Strong character is people who can take criticism, right? That's the number one thing you want in somebody that you're hiring or working with, or even an intimate partner. You want to be able to criticize them on some level in a constructive way. If they can't take any criticism, it shows a weakness in character, and you're never going to be able to work with them on any level. You also want strong character people who can handle stress. So many times these people hired someone who seemed so great, and then the shit hit the fan and they kind of withered and turned into these whiny little 5-year-olds, right? Well, stress reveals who people are. And I instruct people, you can't put people in stressful situations right now, but in the interview process, you can make them sweat a little bit. You can make them a little bit nervous. You can put them in a little bit of stress to see how they react. And I show you what is the proper reaction and what isn't in those kinds of situations. You want people who can work as a team, who are not so ego-driven and everything is about them, who can kind of subsume their ego and work with others. These are signs of a strong character. The opposite is weak character. Stop looking at the resume, at the smile, at the pretty clothes, at the charming words, and get under that surface and look at their character, because that is really what is going to determine, how well you can work with them. And choosing people of bad character is going to make your life hell. Right. I mean, it's very counterintuitive to our social media age, where we think the only way to gain power is to be immediately present continually every single day on Instagram or whatever it is with the new TikTok video, never letting 1 hour go by where people aren't clicking on you, right? So it's kind of a hyper, a mood that we're all caught up in. It's very infecting. And it's not based on real psychology. So if you're so much in people's face, if you're continually there, they're naturally going to grow tired of you. They're naturally going to think that you're kind of weak, that you're trying too hard for attention. They may not say it, but they feel a slight level of contempt from within, right? And so if you disappear for a day or several days or a week, people are going to start thinking about you, and they're going to wondering, well, maybe I didn't really know Chris. Maybe he's a little more mysterious and dimensional than I thought of. Maybe there's something going on. Maybe he's disappeared for this reason or that. And as they think about you, and as they maybe fantasize about what's going on in your mind, it's kind of creates a sort of a seductive process where your spirit is entering their head, as opposed to them being so filled with you that they want to vomit and get rid of you. You're creating an appetite where they want to now know more. It's an incredibly powerful dynamic. And so in a dating situation, it's extremely obvious. That's the most obvious of all. So if you're continually bombarding people with texts, love bombing them, I love you, I need to see you, blah, 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 people might initially think that's kind of cool. I don't get enough of that. But after a couple of days, it starts to get a little bit tiring, and you begin to wonder about the other person. Maybe they're desperate. Maybe it has nothing to do about me. Maybe they're just desperate, right? And so, but if they've created this pattern where they're texting you, and then suddenly they don't for a day or two, you go, wow, maybe I've done something wrong. Maybe they don't like me as much as they liked me before. And now it makes them want to try harder to please you. So learning how to absent yourself in this social media age is extremely important. And it's not easy, I know, where you're trying to always post something on Instagram. It's not just absence, it's just creating a sense of mystery. So people have the sense that they don't thoroughly know you so that they can disdain you, right? You want to keep them on their toes and occasionally do something unpredictable that will surprise them. That's sort of the art here.
In my 48 Laws of Power, I talk about infection, where there are people who have an infecting power on you. They're surrounded by all kinds of drama. They continually present themselves as the victim of other people, whereas in fact, they're the ones that constantly draw this drama to them because that's how they survive. And you're going to find yourself involved with them, and it's going to be horrible to get out of the relationship. You're going to feel guilty. So develop the power to recognize them before you get involved. And I have, in the Laws of Human Nature, tons of advice about that, paying attention to people's nonverbal cues. A narcissist tends to have a very animated face, but a kind of a deadness in their eyes. They're kind of listening to you, but you can hear that they're actually thinking about themselves. They're not really connecting to you through the eyes. The face is alive, but the eyes are dead. There are signs, nonverbal cues that will show you that you're dealing with someone generally very self-directed.